Hello, I'm Sarah's, and some might say I'm toxic. They would be correct. I'm extremely toxic in every way possible. Anyway, my last video about the proper ratios was well received, only for me to find out people don't know how to set up the beam cores that utilize those ratios in the first place. Before we start, some important notes. First, prisms have round hitboxes, smaller than the 2x2 tile they occupy, meaning you can fire in between them like such. Second, to aim a prism, you control-click it, and select this aiming button in the bottom left. While aiming, you'll notice that the aim snaps to the cardinal directions, which you can disable by holding Control while aiming. Let's start working with an example. A pretty standard amount of ions for a competitive 1.5 mil ship is 24, 12 on each side. The first thing I like to do is to set up a background of structure so I can place prisms anywhere without having to worry about connections. Next, I set up a column of prisms like such, where each of these receives two inputs, one from each side. Due to this, I now have to work on every other layer, otherwise I'll interrupt the inputs of these first prisms. So as you know from the last video, you want to have as many outputs as possible to maximize damage, as you lose an eighth of your input damage with every 2-to-1 combination. Here we have 24 inputs, which divides down to 12, then 6, then 3. A safe option would certainly be 3, but 6 is much better for the sake of efficiency, and the faster you can kill an opponent, the better off you are. There are of course trade-offs. 3 important values to keep in mind are outputs, spread, and tightness. Each of these are important and can influence the effectiveness of your ship, and you can actively consider trade-offs and balance accordingly. Outputs, specifically how many you have, determines your damage. Spread of your outputs determines how well you can focus your damage and at what range. Tightness is how wide and difficult your arrangement is to protect. Obviously, you could go for only one output and minimize spread and tightness, but you have awful damage that way. You could go for many outputs like I have on this ship, the Phosphophyllite, but clearly it's a very wide ship with relatively thin defenses. As you can see on my other ship here, the Sunburst, I've opted to utilize 6 outputs to maximize damage at the cost of some tightness. Due to how they're set up, however, spread isn't much of an issue at all at long range. This is rarely important or something most players worry about, but a fourth, arguably unimportant value is explosiveness of your beam core. If I auto-fire the ions on Sunburst here and detonate the front 6, you'll see that a huge amount of prisms remain, and they're all aiming forwards. If you take the time to set this up, it can improve your ability to fight after taking critical damage, which is decided matches for this ship. I would personally reserve this for when you have more practice working with prisms though. So as you may have seen, Sunburst has some interesting angles, and I'd like to go over a method that often assists me in making the prisms go as far as possible, which improves convergence. See, what I do is set up a temporary structure bracket to aim at. You can aim at any intersections you want, midpoints, etc. This allows you to easily measure how far you can push the limit and get up to the edge of it. I often also do this when aiming at other prisms, as they're set on top of structure. When you're satisfied, you can just remove the structure and the prism will be set.